Hello everyone and welcome to a Best of the Year Scots Whay podcast, and this is the one where we look at the best books of 2018, and I am joined again by Vicky Reilly. Hello Vicky.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about our favourite books of the year, but before we get on to the specifics of that, I thought we would talk a little bit about some of the big happenings in publishing and in Scottish writing in 2018. And one of those was definitely the Muriel Spark 100.
Yeah.
Which we kind of foreshadowed on last year's podcast, but I mean it was a huge year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean on the last podcast we kind of just sort of said it was happening because it had kind of just been announced by then. But this whole year, I mean, I left Berlin in August, but I pretty much I worked solidly on the Muriel Spark year all the way up until then, and it was one of the most amazing things to be part of. I absolutely loved it and love Muriel Spark because of it. I
mean, we should say that Berlin republished every single novel.
Yeah.
And so how many was that?
22.
22.
It was quite
indelibly.
Berlin publish a lot of books every year anyway.
Yeah.
And then to have that 22 on top of it, it was quite a challenging year, but really enjoyable at the same time, because it was just amazing how everybody got behind the project. From the introducers, because we had 22 different introducers in every single one of the novels, and they worked really hard, not just on their introductions, but they were kind of like ambassadors for the project as well.
Yeah.
So they helped us out with publicity. We did events. Pretty much there's not many festivals across the UK that we didn't have an event with.
Well, that's the thing. It really was the year of Muriel Spark, and the Muriel Spark 100 was a kind of behind it all. There was obviously the exhibition.
Yeah.
At the National Library.
Which was great.
Yeah, which was great, absolutely. Congratulations to Colin McElroy,
yeah.
if you're listening, who kind of ran that whole exhibition. And then there was lots of other events there was always something going on basically throughout the year.
Sort of in the beginning of the year, it felt very much led by Polygon and the books, but then as the year progressed, there was just so many other people involved in it. There was poetry collections from Theresa Minoz. I think Shane Strachan did a collection as well on her time in Africa. You took part in an event as well.
I kind of did a little piece with Passengers, which was an art show, and we did a showing of Prime Minister Jean Brodie, the film.
Oh
which had been
I forgot about that one as well.
Remastered and a new screening of it.
I was gutted I couldn't come to that because I had something else. There was a squillion million events this year.
It was great to see it again because I hadn't seen it for quite a while.
I've never seen the film.
Oh,
I know.
We should stop the podcast now and make you watch it. It's a fabulous film. But it was great to watch with I don't know ever seen it either on my own or with a Glasgow audience, and to see it with an Edinburgh audience, it was quite something because the person I was sitting beside knew every single line and was reciting it as we were watching it, which was a bit off-putting.
I suppose it's funny that you've got your Edinburgh characteristics and your Glasgow characteristics, and even though you kind of sort of raise your hackles sometimes, at the same time when you see it portrayed in a comedic way or whatever, you're just like, yeah, we're exactly like that.
So would you pick out a favourite Muriel Spark book now after having gone through them?
Well, I've not read all of them.
Right. Okay.
I did plan on reading all of them throughout the whole year, but I got up to Mandelbaum Gate, and then I sort of realised that I didn't want to have a year afterwards where I wasn't reading a new Muriel Spark book. So I decided to stop being so obsessed with Muriel. And also, she kind of, for a long time, particularly at the beginning of the year, she kind of spoiled me for every other book. There was loads of times where I started reading a book, and maybe if the language was a little bit more flowery, it was a bit richer, a bit more pungent, and I was just like, no, get me back
Muriel.
I was like, get me back to Muriel. So last year, my favourite, which I said in the podcast last year, my favourite was Loitering with Intent. The favourite one that I read this year was Memento Mori.
Okay.
Which, if you don't know, is a novel where it's set. There's a community of older people, and they all start getting strange phone calls where the voice on the line just says, "Remember, you must die." So it's like a little mystery, but also an examination on ageing and belief and faith and how you approach death yourself. And I remember reading in The Guardian earlier on this year, because they lovely, they got behind the Muriel Spark project
absolutely.
too, and they had a couple of Muriel Spark book groups, and they did Memento Mori as one of them. And I remember the guy who was the sort of leader of the Guardian book group saying that Memento Mori was a cruel book.
All right.
And I was just like, no, it's not. It's absolutely not.
That's an interesting word to use about Muriel Spark's writing.
It gets bandied about a fair bit, and I think it's a little bit unfair.
I mean, there's darkness.
Yeah.
And sometimes
violence,
what happens to her characters, it doesn't end well.
No, yeah.
Well, cruel's a bit strange.
Yeah, because to me...
Because that implicates nasty as well.
Yeah, and it makes it seem like Muriel is laughing at the people in Memento Mori, and I don't think she ever is. Well, she does laugh at some of their pomposities and all that kind of thing, but particularly the scene where I think Jean is in the hospital, and I think it's Mrs. Barnacle, Granny Barnacle, that's dying, and there's this whole scene where like the nurses and everybody are doing the sort of rituals of death and bringing somebody to the end of their life, and it's done in such a gentle, graceful way, which is probably, I don't know if it's part of Muriel's belief in Catholicism and her thoughts on death as well, and I can't think that anybody that would write a scene like that can be accused of being cruel.
Well, I think if you take one of her more extreme characters, Lise in the driver's seat,
right,
that could be...
See, I've not got to the driver's seat yet.
Well, that could be seen as a character to be mocked, definitely. Or let's take Jean Brodie even. Now there's a character that could be seen to be mocked, and is certainly portraying, things and getting things wrong and ultimately leading to someone dying. But I don't think she's ever laughing at Jean Brodie at all. No,
and by the end of it, you there's a real sympathy towards her, even though she's a bit mental.
Yeah, well, that's right. I think what she's looking at, actually, is that people are complicated, and people do things that maybe don't fit in with what society thinks how they should be. Yeah. And I think a lot of her characters are like that. And I think she was probably like that herself.
And one of the things from reading a lot of the Sparks is that one of the themes that really stands out in loads of her books is identity, and how there is no such thing as a fixed identity.
Yes, absolutely. Which
is, I think, in 2018, that is something that we can all take a bit of a lesson from.
No, absolutely. That's funnily enough, when I was rereading and reading new stuff from Spark throughout the year, you went, well, this is a very current, and you always read things into, from what's happening around you. You can't help it. But you do think this is a very current and vital writer that really should be, recognised. In 100 years, it doesn't seem like 100 when you read her stuff.
No, not at all.
Very current.
And I hope that one of the lasting things from the Muriel Spark year is that folks see her writing in this way, and I think it's lovely that she had Brodie and all that kind of stuff, and that made her lots of money, but she's so much more than just a Morningside marm,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I hope that that's what happens, that because the other great thing was that, there was loads of shops would do book groups, and there was even lots of bloggers online who would do a Reading Muriel year, and it was really great to see books like The Takeover getting really good reviews, because that's not one that's probably as well known. So it's just been a great project.
I do wonder what Alan Taylor's going to do next year.
Oh,
the hardest working man.
Oh my God, we worked that man to death, really. I
should say, for those that don't know, Alan Taylor did a book about his relationship with Muriel. He was very close friends in the latter part of her life, and he seemed to be doing events every single week.
Oh, I mean, I felt sorry for him, but at the same time, you know, this was the moment to do all this.
Absolutely.
I even shared him in an event in Falkirk Library. It was good. But yeah, I mean, he's probably... I can imagine at this Christmas holiday he's going to like just sit back and breathe a sigh of relief. But he was amazing. He's brilliant at events. Like, he absolutely knows how to work an audience and give the best of the stories that he knows, and he knows the books inside out as well.
Yeah.
No, he was a total pleasure to work with, and he was also the series editor of the of the 22 novels as well. So he was the one that was back and forth with the introducers and all that kind of thing.
And I should say, probably most people listening to this will know that it's been a kind of Muriel Sparks year. But if you haven't, then you know these books are beautiful things to have, and inside and out. So you should check them out. Another big event which kind of happened through the year that was book related was Rip It Up, which was the exhibition of Scottish pop music at the National Museum of Scotland. But there was an accompanying book with it, done by the Mr. Vic Galloway. Which,
by all accounts, you should rush out and buy because the print run is low.
And you really should. It's one of my favourite books of the year. For a book to accompany a museum exhibition, it's a lot, much better than we could have expected. And it's really thorough, it's really fair. I mean, Vic has said that on our 100th podcast that, you know, there's a couple of things missing that I wish I'd included. But there's no way you could have included everything, but he has a damn good shot at doing it. And it just was a great, you know, there was a television show, there was a radio show. It was just a great celebration of Scottish pop music.
Yeah, and it's always great where you just get an occasion to, you know, tootle your trumpet a little bit, and so we're doing all right here.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think what was nice about it, and I think a lot of it came from the tone that Vic set in the book, was it was kind of non-judgmental. So there was some Scottish pop music that people were a bit snobby about and going, oh, you know...
Chirpy, cheep, cheep.
Yeah, everything. But this was like, you know what? We are an open church. We welcome everything. And
I didn't know that was a Scottish song, you know.
Yes. Oh, it is. Lots of stuff like that, you know, which sounded American, you know, the early... This was one of the great things about Vic's book was it went right back to the early days, and there was bands that I'd never heard of, or there was bands I had heard of but knew hardly anything, and he kind of filled in. Now, it goes at breakneck speed because it needs to, because it covers right up to the present day.
That's Vic's style as well. Like, he's very much... Well, you can hear his passion and excitement with the subject matter.
Absolutely, and it is kind of bang up to date as well. So, as Vicky says, if you haven't got a copy, it sounds like you should get one quickly.
Yeah, don't wait any longer, people.
Because it'll end up on Amazon in a year's time for 250 quid. As we've just found out with someone else's book. But it was great, yes, as you say, it was great to kind of celebrate Scottish pop in that way. And the exhibition itself was fantastic. So you're now working at Publishing Scotland.
Yes.
So let's talk a bit about Scottish publishing, because I think it's had... after some difficult recent times, let's put it that way, it's had a good year. What about you? What's your point of view?
Yeah, like particularly since joining Publishing Scotland, I've just been blown away by the brilliant commissioning that's going on at the moment. There's not a single publisher that isn't doing something interesting, and I think we've all been really aware. There's like the sort of the freight dark cloud has kind of been hanging over everybody, and you definitely get the sense that the publishers are like, we don't want to end up like that. We don't want to end up like that. Yeah. So I get the sense that there's a carefulness and a caution with how they publish, but a real exuberance in what they're publishing. Yeah. Which is sensible.
Well, I think the problem in previous decades was that some publishers decided it was going to be...
So I want to be a publisher.
Well, there was that, but there was also this idea that to be a successful one, you had to publish loads of people. Yeah. And so there was this idea that quantity, and that often came at the expense of quality. You know, if we throw enough books at the wall, one of them might just hit big,
Yeah.
and we have our own whatever J.K. Rowling or whatever the case may be. Whereas you're right, I think partly led by 404 Inc. That's my feeling. Is that, you know what, we're going to take...
They've brought a fresh energy, a sort of kick up the bum.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are carefully curating their publishing list, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah.
They've had an amazing year with some
Another
amazing year, and just kind of go from strength to strength. But there have been other publishers that have had good years as well.
I suppose we can't really talk about 2018 without talking about Poverty Safari.
Yes.
Which, again, we mentioned last year.
Yeah, we did.
Because at the time that the book had been out for maybe like a month or so when we did the
Luth.
And even by then it was doing really well. It like sold a couple of thousand copies, and you were like, well done. And then in 2018 it just went mental.
Yeah.
and it was just so pleasing to see that something like that could be done by Luth, which are a small company.
Yes.
But I think it went on to sell about 20,000 copies. And then they negotiated a co-publication deal with Picador to be able to take it to a wider audience, and because it's not always easy for Scottish independents to get a look in, and Waterston's Piccadilly buy-in team or the W.H. Smith buy-in team, which is, you know, always a challenge. and then Darren himself managed to get another 2-book deal with Ebury from Penguin Random House.
Wow.
So he's really, and obviously he won the Orwell Prize as well. So he's just been catapulted into a space where he probably didn't expect.
He said as busy a year as Alan Taylor.
Probably.
But that's been an incredible success.
Yeah, and it's still selling really well with Picador too. Like, you know, you go down to London and you see it in the front table at Foyles and all that kind of thing, and it probably wouldn't have got that kind of attention without the groundwork that Lewis put in. So that was brilliant.
Are there any other books that have come out this year that you think, that should be noted?
Well, the other huge book for 2018 isn't really from an independent publisher, and again was published in 2017, and that's Eleanor Oliphant Is Completely Fine.
Oh, yes.
Which has gone on to sell about 1 million squillion copies this year. Like, you look at the bookseller top 100 each week in the bookseller magazine, and I don't think it's dropped out the top 3 for the whole year, and it's probably spent most of the year at number 1.
Right.
And it's just you kind of think to yourself, how many more people can buy this book?
Yeah.
And it's like, but that's, even though it's probably been the biggest selling book of the year, it's kind of been this sort of wee quiet Scottish success story. You know, Gail Honeyman herself is from a very modest background, and even with her tremendous success is still pretty modest, and it's not a book where you see Gail Honeyman at all the events and festivals and things, and on Radio 4 every 2 seconds now, and so it's just that the people kind of stop reading it and kind of stop buying it.
It seems to have been word of mouth.
Yeah, totally.
Which is unusual these days,
Yeah.
because as you say, it's not had a massive ad campaign, and she's not been on everything.
I really can't recall seeing like a big.
No, I mean, it's been in bookshops, but that doesn't necessarily mean people are going to pick it up.
But I gave it to my mum after I read it, and she took it into her work. And then when she took it into her work, everybody in her workplace was like, "Oh, I love that book!" And so it's like this secret army of fans.
So it's the book that people that maybe don't read regularly have been picking up and reading, and I think if you can get that, then...
Well, it's one of those books. It's the dreaded middlebrow word, which I think gets a bad rap. Because how dare an author just write a story with nice characters that everybody likes?
I can imagine.
And it's not, you know, it's not doing pyrotechnics, and it's not pushing the boundaries of what literature can do and all that kind of thing. But, you know, you don't have to read literature like that all the time. Sometimes you just want a good story well told.
And actually, literature like that often struggles. You know, the stuff that is pushing the boundaries, which is...
Apart from Milkman.
Yes,
which has
yeah.
gone on to massive success
Which
after
won
the Booker win.
the Booker this
Yeah.
year, and we'll maybe talk about Robin Robertson's The Long Take, which
Yeah.
was also on the shortlist. But it seems to have taken off.
Yeah,
absolutely.
which it shows, you know.
Shows you prizes are still important.
It shows you prizes are still important, and it shows you that no matter how prescriptive critics and literary editors try and make the reading public feel, just let us get on with it.
Yeah.
And you know, the audiences will find their way to books that they want to read without being made to feel guilty or being made to feel like, oh, the Booker has lost its shine, and this is
They've
the
been
thing.
saying that since Jim Kelvin.
I know
won it.
that's true, but it's like I'm so tired of like the main chat about books and art and all that kind of thing being always so negative and coming from a snarky place. When
I think that's changing.
good,
But I think that it's interesting because I think it's changing. Certainly in Scottish music, you know, I think there's a kind of real feeling of support. I think it's often because there isn't riches to be made out there, so everyone's like, well, we're all in the same boat, so let's support each other. But what comes from that is a real kind of a warmer feeling of things, and you know, hopefully that might happen. I think it maybe does with smaller publishers as well.
Yeah, there is a definite. You feel like you're part of a gang with being with everybody at Publishing Scotland, because we're all supporting each other, and it's really nice to have met all the other publishers and work together with them and suggest things to them and help them along, and it's been really enjoyable.
Well, if Scottish writing is a gang, then the daddy is still crime fiction, I think.
Oh God, yeah.
But I think, again, it's something that sometimes people dismiss and they go, oh, tartan noir, Scottish crime fiction, you know, it's not for me or whatever. It's obviously for a lot of people because it's really doing well. So they can just go, I don't care what you think. And rightly so. But this year, very, very different books came out. Liam McIlvaney's McIlvaney Prize winning book, The Quaker, which was based on the Bible John murders in Glasgow, was a fantastic read. My mum's favourite book of the year, I should say. Yes, it is. She absolutely loved it. Douglas Skelton has done something a bit different with the Janus run. Set it in New York, and it's real pacey thriller, really good. Almost
really
like a Bourne kind of feel about it.
I would really love to see that book get an audience outside Scotland as well. It
And
deserves
could
it.
do. Definitely could do.
It should be made into a TV show as well.
Yeah, well, it has got that feel about it.
It really
definitely.
has. It's very cinematically written.
Another one is I've forgotten the title of it now. Peacock, Stuart David's Peacock.
Oh yeah, Peacock's Alibi.
That's it, Peacock's Alibi. Gosh, I shared his event. I can't even remember. It's terrible. Well, it was at the start of the year.
Yeah.
Which is a genuinely funny Scottish crime book.
Caper.
It's a caper. It is. It's a Glasgow set caper, and Peacock Johnson is definitely one of the more memorable characters, despite us forgetting the title of the book. One of the more memorable characters of the year.
But just like, this is the thing, you know, you can be as inventive and as creative and as different as you want within the crime fiction genre, and I think that's why Scottish crime is so popular, is because we do so many different things with it.
Well, a perfect example for that, which is on my top 10 books of the year, was Olga Wojcias's Miss Blaine's Prefect
I love
and the
that.
Golden Samovar.
Yeah,
Because it's time-travelling crime, but it's kind of Muriel Spark meets...
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, yeah, exactly, yeah. Or Quantum Leap, that meets Quantum
I
Leap.
read that in a day.
Yeah.
I thought, right, I'm not going out, I'm just going to stay in my jammies, and I just lay down on the couch and read it all in a day, and it was such good fun. Because because of the so many elements, there are so many elements to it, it could have fallen apart, but it totally doesn't. It's really tight, and the characters are brilliant, the humour's brilliant. The nod to Muriel Spark is brilliant. I love the great characters as well. Yeah. And this is I loved the footman who was like prostrating himself to her, like, throughout the whole book. And the other thing is like the humour is directed towards the main character.
Yes, yeah.
Like she's always banging on about how much of a genius she is, and she can't see the truth from a mile away. Like all the readers absolutely know what's going to happen.
How can you not see this? Yes.
But yeah, no, it was a great fun book. That was a great fun book.
It's a book that if you're listening to this and you think, oh, I don't like crime novels, then try Miss Blaine's Prefect and the Golden Samovar, because it's you'll find it very interesting. So that was on Saraband, and they had another cracking year as well. And perhaps my favourite novel of the year was Donald S. Murray's As the Woman Lay Dreaming, which was about the Ailari disaster of 1919. And Donald did a podcast with us very kindly. Have you read it? Have you got it?
I've only read bits of it. I've not read the whole thing. So
it's just a really emotional book, for want of a better thing. It's about the Ailari disaster, which was one of the biggest maritime disasters ever in British history. People returning from the First World War were so close to the shore in Shetland that they could almost touch it. And then the boat sank. But it's actually much more than that, the novel itself. It's about different generations of the same family over the years, and how this disaster has touched their lives and touched their communities' lives, and in turn touched their nation's lives, even if people aren't aware of it.
Yeah.
And it looks at language, and it looks at geography, and it looks at all sorts of things which relate to Scotland, and it's rather special, very, very, but very emotional book, I would say. And
it is a piece of history that should be more. I mean, I think it was the worst peacetime maritime event since other than the Titanic.
The Titanic, that's right.
Which, gets $1 million films made.
Yeah, 200 people, I think, drowned.
I know.
You should check it out. You should check out the book. You should check out the podcast. But you should have a look into the story of the Ailari.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be TV shows about it in January, because January itself is the actual 100 years since it happened. So you've still got time to sort of feel part of the story. And it's sold really well, reprinted before it even was released.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's... Yeah, which is interesting, because you say the story's not that... Well, I certainly, amongst my friends and family and stuff, didn't really know about it. So for something to have that success, there is that thirst, I think, for... Yeah, but there's thirst for Scottish history anyway.
But also the fact that it is a story about family as well.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Saraband also had the Janus Run, Douglas Skelton's Janus Run, which we mentioned, and another book that they brought out this year was Mandy Haggis' The Walrus Mutterer.
Oh, I see. I've seen that. I've not picked it up, but I was just because I saw the title and I was like, interesting.
Yeah, well, it is interesting. Absolutely, I felt the same thing, but it's kind of got Game of Thrones meets Vikings vibe about it, so I highly recommend that as well. But I just wanted to mention, but it shows you what a good year Saraband have had. Many other things out, of course, but as I said, careful curation and really kind of getting behind the books.
And a good solid team as well.
Very much so. Yeah. Great team, yeah, absolutely. So I spoke that Donald's book touched upon Scottish history, and I think you've got a few history books that you would like to mention.
Yeah, I mean, this year, 2018, again, lots of anniversaries.
Yes.
So this year has been quite known for books about women because of the 100 years since women's suffrage.
Yes.
And Scottish publishers have been taking part in that as well. So you had from 404, you had We Shall Fight Until We Win.
Yeah, which is tremendous.
We've had from Canongate, we've had Jeanette Winterson's Courage Calls to Courage Everywhere. And then
Gerda Stevenson's Quines
came
out. Which
I was just going to say that. The three that sort of coalesced in my mind was Gerda Stevenson's Quines, Rosemary Goring's Herstory, Scotland Herstory, and funnily enough, EUP's the Biographical Dictionary of Scottish Women.
All right.
Now, all three do similar things, but just in a different way. So Gerda writes about specific women from Scottish history through poems. The Biographical Dictionary of Scottish Women.
That's what it says. Isn't it?
Yeah. And Scotland's Herstory from Rosemary Goring it's an anthology of writing from women or about women in Scotland's history. And, you know, in a year where we see another film about Robert the Bruce, you just think, come on, all these women that's lived throughout times in Scotland, and they've got such amazing stories to tell. Not just the kings and the queens and the sort of, you know, countesses and royalty and all that kind of thing, but women that did amazing things way before their time, or just showed courage in brilliant ways. Mary Brooksbank, I'd never heard of her before. Why are there not books written about Mary Brooksbank in the same way that there are books written about John McLean, for example, or other Red Clydeside heroes and all that kind of thing. There's just this. I said this on the Books from Scotland website. Why these books should be sent to every Hollywood producer across the world, across America, because there are so many great stories in those books that are just dying to have somebody tell them in a more mainstream way, so that everybody finds out about them. And I think that I don't want to call it a trend, because I hope it's not just a trend.
Yes, of course.
I hope it carries on. But next year, Hess are publishing a book by Sarah Sheridan, which sort of does something similar. It's like speculative geography.
Right.
Which is, it does a map of Edinburgh where the street names and statues and all that kind of thing, instead of being named after men from history, it's women from history.
Right.
So, you know, there's a real desire and appetite to start telling all these stories from Scotland's history, and so say that it lasts forever.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Muriel Spark just got our street name or Whay in the Meadows this year, and like, I think there's more statues to animals than there are women in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
That's no right.
No, it's not. No. There's room for everyone.
Many more, yes.
Yeah. Absolutely, and these are the Rosemary Goring's Herstory is one that I've dipped into myself, and it's really fascinating.
Because it's a great. It's like, you don't have to read it from page 1 to the end. You can just sort of, you know, flick it open and come across something, and you're just like, I didn't know it was as bad as that, being a miner's wife at such and such. And
but these are the stories that need to be told, as you say, that and just have often been overlooked. I want to make mention of the last again, we've mentioned the books before, but Stuart Cosgrove's Soul and Civil Rights trilogy came to an end this year with Harlem 69.
Yes.
It's been a hell of an undertaking. And I know you worked kind of closely with Stuart when you were at Berlin, but
he's a whirlwind.
He is a whirlwind, there's no doubt about that. These books, when taken as a whole, tell 3 years, 67, Detroit 67, Memphis 68, Harlem 69, is that right?
Yep.
Starting off kind of with soul music as the in point, but really looking at the movement, the changes in civil rights on 3 pivotal years. You know, perhaps you could say that the death of Martin Luther King bang in the middle was the most pivotal, but it's an incredible undertaking. They're just such interesting and well written books.
But because he knows his subject so well, like within 2 minutes of meeting him, you just know that he just knows everything that he needs to know about these books. And that's like, I can imagine him when he's writing these books, he's just sitting at his desk blasting the keyboard, because it's all in there. And watching him do events where, you know, he doesn't even need a chairperson or anything. You just introduce him and off he goes. And his enthusiasm and passion and love for the subject is apparent on every page, and it's the way he makes connections as well. It's sort of like this weird 6 degrees of kind of thing. Like
that's true.
Where you think of Detroit and you think of Motown and you think of the Supremes and all that, but then he brings in so many different elements and all the links between.
It's worth looking at the indexes of the book and see the names that come up, and you go, how the hell, is Snoop Dogg related to this? But there's some amazing bits of trivia that you find out.
Yeah.
Like Nile Rodgers was one of the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
I didn't know. And Samuel Jackson was involved as well, and as you say, it's not simply about those 3 years and those 3 places. They're the starting points, but then it just kind of explodes, to all sorts of things and all sorts of links, and you get the protests in Paris. It goes over to Europe, goes to South America. It's an incredible achievement.
It's like the butterfly effect.
It's
of
exactly
everything, that. and so in a way, it's quite like it's a soulful book, not just because of the music, but because of the way that we all interconnect and
because he often takes, instead of doing the obvious thing, perhaps, which would have been to take the big names of music or the big names of politics, he often gets these smaller characters who you've never heard of, or at least I'd never heard of, and then that's how he gets the story. The story comes out of their story, you know. So the guy who was a record obsessive but also a heroin dealer and a gangster, and but had seemed to be he would hype lost causes almost in music and put records out that nobody else would put out. And I guess it goes back to what we were saying about Muriel Sparks' characters, is that people are complicated and people aren't straight through. And it's not all people with black hats and people with white hats. There's all sorts of bits in between.
Like Fat Jack Taylor, is that
Fat Jack Taylor,
and these people are, they're the catalysts for huge seismic shifts in culture and all that kind of thing, but they are forgotten while the big names are the ones that go on to get the glory of, the inventors of disco or da-da-da-da. But Stuart really brings it back to where all these stories began.
And you've just been talking about women's stories that haven't been told. Well, he does do that. A lot of the central characters in it.
Like Rosa Parks appears again, and is it the Detroit '67 that she appears again? Yeah, because she was part of the campaign. I'm sure she had something to do with the Algiers motel incident and all that kind of thing. And you just think, my God, everybody just knows her because of the bus boycott, but she went on to do so many other things. And Stuart finds that out, and you had,
was it Betty Maybury, who was the muse of Miles Davis?
Yeah, how cool was she?
She was the coolest person they ever. And go and check out her music.
Yeah,
but she was a kind of precursor to Nona Hendrix and Prince almost.
Yeah,
with her style, with her, and
all these amazing women that just. That should be as well known as Aretha Franklin or whatever, and they for some reason the timing or just the way it worked with the record company, it just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But they're brilliant. They're brilliant stories, and it was great with Memphis '68. I went down to the Laharn Festival in Wales this year with Stuart to Chumham to pick up the Penderin Prize for Memphis '68, because that won an award. And it was such a great weekend with lots of different writers of music books and all that kind of thing. There's a real appetite for music books that do more than just sort of do potted biographies of musicians of their eras, and Stuart does that brilliantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think Polygon have a good history of doing that, of putting books out which aren't just. And then they did this, and then they did. I'm thinking of the Paul McCartney book in the 70s, which was the kind of lost. For some people, it was the lost period of McCartney, after the Beatles and before Give My Regards to Broad Street.
Well, look, we can all admit that but he's had such a varied career.
He's a very varied career. But what I mean is, it was just a very interesting book.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for the Frog Chorus. I have a soft spot for Ebony and Ivory.
Wow. Okay.
But his 70s period, that was ripe for reassessment.
Oh,
his 70s
definitely.
period,
Some
anyway.
really interesting. Some of his best music was from that. And maybe I'm amazed as one of my favourite songs of all time.
How good is that? I know.
Absolutely.
He's a lot more than just silly love songs.
But Stuart has definitely set the benchmark for what can be done with a music book.
Yeah.
You know, because and I think it would be really fascinating to turn the attention onto the UK and see, you know, in a similar way.
Well, he did that a little bit with Young Soul Rebels.
Yes, I suppose so. I suppose that's true. Yeah, looking at the Northern Soul scene and the scene, that is true.
Though he's staying in America for his next book.
Oh, is it as an exclusive? Is it? Is that what's happening?
So you'll be pleased to hear.
Oh, I'm delighted with that. Yeah.
So this trilogy might have come to an end, but next year there will be a book from Stuart called Cassius X.
Wow. Muhammad Ali.
Yes.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, so it goes back to the early 60s and talks about the emergence of soul.
Right.
And it stars, you know, Cassius X, Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, and his relationships with people like Sam Cooke, Malcolm X, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, never fear. Never fear. Your appetite will be whetted again.
That's good. So we can talk about his next book on one of these podcasts in the future. We mentioned what a good year again 404 Inc. have had, and there's two books that are on my best of list that I'd like to mention. Helen McClory's Mayhem and Death, which is kind of short fiction, and I deliberately use that rather than short stories, and Chris McQueer's Here We Fucking Go, because we have...
You gave it its full name.
Because we have a wee warning on our podcasting for some reason. Not that we're always swearing on it, but we have an explicit sign, so I can say that. So let's talk about Helen McClory's Mayhem and Death. It's a second collection, short fiction, some of it flash fiction. There is a longer kind of piece at the end, but just fabulous book. She's such a good writer, probably one of my favourite writers around at the moment.
Yeah.
Just inventive,
yeah,
trying to do something new, obviously in love with writing in all formats, you know, no matter what it is, and just pushing the kind of boundaries of what can be done and what can be looked at. I think her writing, it puts me in mind of Catherine Joseph's music, which I love as well, in terms of themes and just feel about it. There's a kind of sensuality at the heart of it, you know, which I think some people probably find uncomfortable. And also Jenny Fagan's There's a Witch in the Word Machine, which we'll talk about as well. But that, I think her poetry does similar.
See, I've not got round to reading Helen McClory yet, and it's a great bugbear of mine.
Well, I would recommend it all.
I know. When I walked in at the Publishing Scotland offices, I saw a copy of Mayhem and Death on the shelf, and I was like, I'm going to take that. Yeah. I've not got round to it yet.
But yeah, I mean, I that would be my recommendation. Her stuff is incredible. I can't wait to see what she does. Does next. Similarly, we know that Hings, or most people know that Hings was a big success. It was the debut.
I can't believe how many copies of that book. So if you go to any publisher and said, I've got a debut collection from an unknown writer in Glasgow and it's short stories, most commissioning editors would be like, oh.
I don't think so.
But if the commission editors would then see the sales figures for Hings now, they'd be like, oh my God, that's better than our star novel.
So, difficult thing to follow up.
Yeah.
Lots of pressure to follow up. But he's done that and more, I think, with HWFG, as it says on the title.
Family friendly.
If you like Things, you're going to love it.
Yeah.
But I think he does. It's kind of developed his style. It's so unusual, I think, to have a writer who's got his voice straight away. You know, often, even I'm thinking back to the early James Kelman short stories, which are great. But it took him a couple of collections to kind of really get up and running, I think, anyway. But Chris seems to have done it straight away. I mean, we were at one of his launch events, and they just sound right when he tells them. I mean, they are telling of tales, you know. It's a bit like, you go to the pub
Yeah.
and someone comes in and goes, oh, I've got
You'll-
this to tell
yeah.
you, I'll never believe what happened to me. And away you go. And that's a talent, because it's quite rare that someone can do that.
Yeah, and there's such heart to them as well.
Yeah.
Like, they're more than just working class people being a bit cheeky. There's such heart to them. Big Angie, I like, you're just like, you want her on your team, you know?
Absolutely, you certainly do. You don't want her against you. But you're right, again, like you were talking about Sparks' characters. Chris isn't poking fun at anyone. Well, this is people I know and whose stories are rarely told.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who said this quote about Scottish writing. It was from a while ago. And they said the difference between Scottish writing and English novels in particular was that in English novels, the kind of damaged and people are at the sidelines, or maybe a friend, or they're maybe someone who knows, or they're poked fun at or something like that. In Scottish writing, they're often the main character.
Yeah.
They're the central character. And I think that's exactly what, not that they're all damaged for one
No,
another, that's
no.
not what I'm saying, but it's people who very rarely appear in books.
Or any cultural.
Or anywhere.
Yeah,
Anywhere, yeah.
And
unless they're being poked fun at or laughed at.
Or pitied.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just really annoys me, you know. It's just what Chris does is, you know, there's a lot of hand wringing about, you know, folk that aren't hankering for like attending dinner parties and talking about mortgages, and that's how you have a good time. You drink nice wine and you talk about mortgages. You don't go out at the weekend and, you know, just have it. Whereas, you know, yes, you do, and you don't have to hand wring about it. You don't have to be like, these are people we need to save.
Yeah.
They're not people that need to be saved. You know, they work hard, and that is how they let themselves go at the weekend. It's like the Northern Soul thing, you know, living for the weekend and all that.
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
thing. And it just baffles me that folk think working class culture is something that's problematic or you know,
we can't talk about it.
It's just,
or we can't celebrate it.
Yeah.
Yes, you should celebrate it.
And because the truth is, most of the stuff that starts from working class cultural undergrounds, whatever, makes it into the mainstream at some point.
Absolutely.
Especially in music, you know. And to read Big Angie, you know, going to our Butlins-esque type holiday with our crooner singer man and all that kind of thing, it's like, you know, that's my childhood, you know? Like, I know those kinds of places. And
did you ever see Huns and Roses?
I didn't see Huns and Roses.
You're some loyalist heavy metal covers, man.
But, you know, I did do my fair bit of dance routines to pop songs and all that kind of thing. And, you know, it doesn't make, like, the fact that the thought that these people don't have an inner life, that don't have the sympathies and fears and all that, it's just nonsense. So it pleases me no end that we've got writers like Chris McQueer who is writing stories like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And people are reading them.
Yeah.
I mean, you're really doing well. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So I've talked a little bit about some of my books of the year. Anything that you'd like to bring up in particular?
Well, actually, this year I made a concerted effort to read BAME fiction. So I read a lot of, I read some James Baldwin, I read some Elif Shafak, Harry Kunzro, but my favourite one, well, actually, talking about Chris McQueer, one of the books, I can't remember the name of the author, but the book was called Jaguar Nana, and it was set in Nigeria, and it was written in the 60s, and it was very similar. The character of Jaguar Nana was this larger than life woman, a kind of a sort of Nigerian Big Angie,
right?
who goes out with younger men. She just cares about fashion and going out dancing and music and all that stuff, and it just sort of takes a sort of year in the life of her, really, where she, you know, falls out of love, gets dumped, has a few bad things happen to her, but she just survives it all. And it's that kind of thing where, you know, the author didn't invite you to feel sorry for her. she knows what she likes. She knows who she is. She's got a core to herself that was really, really appealing, even as she went through different tragedies and all that. So that was really good.
So what was the name of that again?
Jaguar Nana.
Right.
But I can't remember the author though, which is really bad. And the other favourite one was another classic by a guy called Ishmael Reed. It was written in the late 60s or early 70s, and it's called Mumbo Jumbo, and it is the weirdest, brilliantest book. Like, I didn't get a lot of it, you know, there was a lot of cultural stuff that passed me by, but it's kind of like, it's like superhero, voodoo, noir crime.
Wow.
It's just, there's a whole... it's just full of energy, full of craziness. And the main character, this Vodun priest guy called Papa Laba, and it's just brilliant. I would really recommend it. I think I feel like I have to find out more about like jazz and New York and all that kind of thing, and even more about voodoo and stuff like that to properly get a lot of the references and all that kind of thing. But
it could be handy to have a bit more knowledge of voodoo.
But the energy of it and the characters are so great, and yeah, I took this on holiday with me and it was brilliant. But it's also a really good study and satire of America and racism and all that kind of thing. And there's bits in it as well where he really doesn't hold back, and you're just like, yeah, come on. And so I suppose again, it seems very pertinent even though it was written decades ago. So I would recommend that. Ishmael Reed's Mumbo Jumbo. And a Scottish book which I really loved reading and hasn't probably got as much attention is Stuart Kelly's The Minister and the Murderer.
Yeah, no, I haven't got around to reading that, and I would like to.
It is a mad book.
Yeah. And
I can understand why it maybe hasn't done as well, because it's totally unclassifiable.
For those that don't know, Stuart Kelly is the books reviewer of the
Scotsman, in Scotland on Sunday. Though I think he's more freelance and he does lots of other places. So he's written this non-fiction book called The Minister and the Murderer, which at first glance is supposed to be about the story of this guy who murdered his mum and spent time in jail. When he was released, he decided to train to be a minister, and so it's about the way, you know, if somebody can be rehabilitated, and did he make a good minister, and what is the essence of forgiveness and all that kind of thing. So it seems like it's sort of true crime, but it is so much more than that as well. There is there's a meditation himself on what it means to be a good man, and literary excursions into like close reading of the Bible books and all that kind of thing, which, you know, I'm not somebody that had a religious upbringing, so I've never really read the Bible, and I don't really know the meanings of religion and like sort of symbols and all that kind of thing. So it was really fascinating to read all that. And it's also a little bit of a history of the Church of Scotland as well, which sounds really dry, but it totally isn't.
I can imagine it isn't. No, listen, I went to the Church of Scotland when I was wee. Yeah, I can imagine.
And then it's also a book about Stuart himself and about his own wrestling with faith. And so there's a whole heap of stuff in there. And it is like having a conversation with Stuart. It is just a mixture of deep knowledge, and it's I really, really enjoyed it. And it'll be coming out in paperback.
Well, that's
in 2019, so
excellent.
Maybe it'll get more of an audience with the paperback. I hope so, because as I say, it's a very strange book, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, of course it is. Absolutely, we welcome strange. This year also saw a republishing of, as you know, and as many people who listen to this will know, one of my favourite books, and it was Ron Butlin's The Sound of My Voice, came back out on Polygon.
Do you know, I hadn't read it until this year as well. It was always one of those books that I always kept meaning to read and then never ever got round to, and I was like, right. I read it in a day as well. I remember that it was my birthday that I read it, and I took the day off work, and I took myself off to a nice bar.
Excellent.
I know, just got nice food and a big glass of red wine and just sat and read the book and I was like, this is the great way to spend my birthday.
Yeah, it is.
And it surprised me. Even though I thought I knew the book because you know I've heard so much about it. It was so much more. It surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the amount of humour surprised me. I thought it was going to be like
grim.
And it is. There's a
Yes.
lot of grim moments in there.
There definitely is. And it was really interesting, you know, and we mentioned earlier on that you bring what's happening culturally or socially when you read. You can't help but do that. It's interesting for me to reread it quite a while after I'd read it last. And particularly the stuff with Morris in the office with the way he treats the secretaries and stuff.
After Me Too and all that kind of thing. And that's the thing, the inevitability of the moment with his secretary. You knew it was going to happen and you're just like, oh, Morris.
Oh dear.
But that's it. Like, it would distress me if folk were sort of like, oh, don't read this book because of.
Oh no.
Yeah,
absolutely.
like, you know, the character of Morris is he doesn't actually have real power really in his life, so it's a really interesting way to garner sympathy for somebody that could do something just so you're just like, oh God.
Well, you know, I mean, you say there is humour in it, but it's black.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, the fact he calls his kids the accusations.
Yeah. God, every time I read that, I was like, stop it now.
But what I'm interested in is.
And the way he talked about his wife as well.
Yeah. Oh no.
Why the hell she stayed with him?
No, but I mean, there's surreal bits. There's because of the way it's written in the second person, where you have to kind of go, "What have I just read? What's just happened here?" Particularly the opening scene, which is a horrific scene. But what I'm interested in is when a publisher decides that they're going to republish a book. Is it just you think, well, it's not been out for a while, or this will fit with what's happening at the moment, or do you know? Can you answer?
Well, I think well, we work with. Well, I say we.
Yeah.
I'm not Berlin anymore, but Berlin work with Ron Butlin anyway.
Yes.
He publishes poetry and his children's books, and the rights were Freight had them.
Yes, right.
And we'd always said. I mean, there's in the editorial meetings. There's always a discussion about bringing classics back.
Right.
And that just seemed, you know, a no-brainer kind of thing to bring that one back. I think more publishers should bring out more.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's an incredible kind of backlog of stuff.
Yeah.
And especially if
especially Polygon, ex-Polygon stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a whole archive of things, you know, that
Polygon classics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Publishing is an interesting place at the moment because there's some different ways of doing it. We were just talking beforehand about 2 record labels that have brought out books this year. We've got Last Night from Glasgow have got Stephen Watts and Friends Mixtape, which is a poetry collection, all based on music and memories of music and first bands and albums and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And some of the friends are Douglas Stewart, James Yoxton, Dot Allison, Sushil K. Dade, loads and loads of other people as well. But which you should really check out. It's a great book. But Stephen's a really great poet himself, a great live poet as well. If you ever get the chance,
I've never
to see
seen him perform, and I really
fabulous.
want to. Yeah.
And the other one is Silver Chords, which has come out on Scottish Fiction, which is an Edinburgh indie label, and that's from a beer jacket who's been playing music. In and around Scotland, I think. Well, gosh, I might have saw him in the mid 2000s. I think. Yeah, I think so. I hope that's right, Peter. If you're listening, I'm not doing you a disservice, but I'm fairly sure. And it's a beautiful book.
Yeah.
Of his
they
short
didn't
stories.
scrimp on the production values.
Absolutely not. When I first got my hand on a copy, I was like, wow, this is fabulous. And it comes with a CD.
I know,
it's
a CD, not even an MP, like a wee. What's it called? Memory drive.
Yeah. And of his songs, which are great, and it's called Silver Chords, Songs and Stories, and the songs mix into the stories. There's a pairing going on there. But it's interesting to me that record labels might start to think, we could start to put out perhaps music related books.
And maybe publishers could start to do a bit of cross genre stuff too.
Yeah, get involved. But it shows you that there's definitely things to, because I know that last night from Glasgow we're going, well, we don't know anything about books. But they were able to get some of the people who do know something about books and ended up putting this fantastic little poetry collection out. Another book which interested me and was one of my favourites from the year, which was Helen Taylor's The Back Streets of Purgatory. And she did that on Unbound, is that the name of it?
This is the Caravaggio one,
yes,
isn't it?
absolutely. Yeah. So it's about Caravaggio rocks up in Glasgow, and it's as mad as that sounds. But it's about mental health. It's about disease, alcoholism. It's a fantastic and really. I think it's her first novel. I'm fairly sure it is.
Yeah, I went to an Unbound event. Maybe even last year, maybe in 2017, where a bunch of Scottish writers who were publishing through Unbound just did a sort of, because not all the books were published by then, because I don't know if you know the Unbound.
No, that's what I'd like to know a bit more about, because as far as I know, you basically almost like a Kickstarter, you get the people to buy the book up front, or at least put in for the book up front, and then you get to do it.
And at the point where I went to that event, not all the books were fully funded yet, so it was a way to get people interested in the book before it came out, so that it would get funded as well. And I'm sure that Caravaggio book was one of them. Yeah. It rings because I've not read it yet, but
it's a really good read, and it shows you that there's more than one way if you want to kind of get your book out there. There's different ways of doing it, including this year a couple of Scottish writers who went to American publishers and did that. I think Crooked Cat might be
American.
Yeah, American. So Martin Geraghty's book came out on that, and one that I think we've both read.
Well, no, I've not actually read it yet.
Oh, have you not? Which is MJ Nichols.
It's been looking at me accusingly all year since the event.
Well, I was lucky enough to chair his Edinburgh event, and it's MJ Nichols, The 1002nd Book to Read Before You Die, and that's published by Sagging Meniscus.
Right.
But I think, so that's an interesting thing as well, that people might look overseas.
Yeah. I wonder if it's because, I don't know, if maybe there are more well-known, really short, small print presses
possibly.
In America, so I don't know.
I guess there's positives and negatives. The positives might be that you get it published at all. The negatives might be that you maybe don't have the same backup once it is published, because people are in the States rather than over here.
Like it would be quite difficult to sell in Britain a book from a small press in America, just purely for logistical reasons. Like the book's probably not distributed by a recognised distributor to WH Smith or Watterson's or whatever.
Okay.
So it's
because I know Martin Geraghty in particular. He has been doing almost all the promotion himself on his novel, and someone else, another Scottish writer, J.V. Bapty.
Oh, I don't know.
Sorry.
Initials, man, initials.
Yeah, I know I should go with the initials. That's she did. I think that was Crooked. I think I'm right in saying that was Crooked Cat as well. But are there other changes in publishing at the moment? Any kind of trends or new things happening?
There are a growing number of small presses that are starting in Scotland, so maybe, in the future, Scottish writers won't have to go over to America, speculative books. Stuart Rhubarb, who specialises in performance poetry. There's loads of little Cloderick Press as well. There's quite a few just starting up, which is quite exciting to see, and so hopefully there will be maybe more of a culture of that kind of small press. Building up.
The Stuart Rhubarb, they're putting Jenny Lindsay's work out,
that
just
is one.
fabulous.
That's one of the ones that I'm looking forward to in 2019. I think it's coming out in March. I'm not sure.
And I think they also took on a couple of people who fell at the hands of Freight.
Yeah, well, see, that's been the other lovely thing about this year is that a lot of writers who were published with Freight have had their books picked up since then. So I think last year, maybe Ever Dundas was the only one that had sort of been picked up again. But yeah, so Harry Giles and Rachel McCrum got picked
Rachel
up by
McCrum's, which
Jude
is a
Rhubarb.
brilliant collection. I've got that. Yeah.
Who else? Sue Lawrence is getting published by Saraband as well. Jim Carruth went to Polygon.
Yeah.
And I know that Janice Galloway's Jellyfish is going to be published by Granta next year.
And Fishnet came out in black and white this year as well. Kristen Innes' Fishnet.
So, like, at the aftermath of that, there have been a lot of positives from that.
I should just say Martin Geraghty's book, I've just been referring to it as if you all definitely know the title. It's A Mind Polluted, and that was the one that came out on Crooked Cat, and I think J.B. Baptiste was Forbidden. Forgive me if that's not correct. But both really good books. But I just think it's interesting, these different models that are coming through. And I should say Ian J. Nichols' The 1002nd book to read before you die is one of my favourite books of the year. It's on my list.
Okay.
And it's yes, I'm just saying, I'm not accusing you, but again, it's a book about
books.
It's a book about books. It's a book about reading. It's a love affair with reading, and I'll say no more than that. Go out and check it out for yourself. So you've mentioned 2019. What are you looking forward to in 2019?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, I don't know all of stuff, but there's a fair few things that I'm looking forward to. One of the first books that's coming out in January actually is by Sandstone, and it's called The Wolves Leninsky Prospect.
Oh wow!
And it's a spy thriller stroke love story set in Moscow in the 70s.
Oh wow! Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so I think it should.
What's it called again? The Wolves?
The Wolves Leninsky Prospect.
Fantastic.
Prospect with a K as well.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I've managed to get an advance copy of that, so that might be one of my reading adventures on the Christmas holidays. Another book is obviously David Keenan's new one, which is coming out in January as well.
Exactly.
For the Good Times.
Yes, absolutely. I've started reading that. It's really good. Yeah.
Good.
So I've got homework, people.
Yes, you'll be writing a review for the Books from Scotland website.
I will be indeed.
So, I mean, I loved This Is Memorial Device, and
absolutely.
I've read bits of the new one, and it just strikes me that it's just going to be as brilliant as that one.
He's such an interesting writer. I opened the first page, and it's got a quote by Nietzsche and a quote by Perry Como. Have I made that up? I think that's... And then,
because of the characters. Yeah, that makes sense, actually, yeah.
And then you look at the page numbers listings, and it's 00000000, and you go, oh, David, you're at it again. But that's what I'm really looking forward to. That.
I think those two are coming out in January, and there's a Jenny Lindsay one as well. I think it's certainly getting a lot of attention and buzz about it already, is Damien Barr's debut novel, You Shall Be Safe Here.
Oh, fabulous.
So he wrote a memoir called Maggie and Me a few years ago.
Was a big success. Yeah.
And but this You Shall Be Safe Here is, when folks say write what you know, this is totally not that, because it's set in South Africa and all that kind of thing. So, but by all accounts, it's getting rave reviews ahead of publication. So I think that'll be quite a big book next year. And the other one that I'm looking forward to is Kerry Hudson's Lowborn.
Oh, I like Kerry Hudson.
Yeah. I think that could be sort of the poverty safari for 2019.
Right.
And 404 have got their first novel coming out as well.
Oh, exciting. From
Elle Nash. So it's not even a Scottish writer, it's an American writer.
Yep.
Animals Eat Each Other.
There's a lot of good noise about that.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've got a proof, which again I'm saving for the Christmas holidays. And then we were talking about crime fiction earlier on, and Canongate are launching their own crime fiction imprint.
Ah, okay.
In May, I think it's Blackthorn that's the name of their crime fiction imprint. Because they've had a couple of little forays into crime fiction over the last couple of years, so I think maybe this is a sign that they're going to make a more concerted effort to get into that space. And Douglas Skelton, who we're talking about, is doing his next series, his new series, with our good friends at Polygon. He's doing a new series, and the first one's called Thunder Bay.
Excellent.
And it's a Scottish set series set in Argyll. It's one of the islands. I can't remember which one.
He's very prolific, isn't he, our Douglas? Wow.
Yeah, I've seen the cover because there was a big cover reveal a few weeks ago. So I'm really interested to read that one.
Douglas is one of my favourite writers. You know, everything he does, I just think he can do sense of humour, he can do thrilling, he's got all of that. It's really got everything. We should probably mention Charles E. McGarry as well, whose Leo Moran, second Leo Moran novel came out this year, and they're always a great read. You know? Great character, Leo Moran.
Leo Moran, stuck in a big country house in Dumfries.
Dumfries, absolutely, yeah. Hunting, shooting, fishing, and solving crimes.
Sounds like a good weekend.
Well, I want to mention there's a couple of other books before we wrap things up, which are on my list. Andrew Crummie's The Great Chain of Unbeing, which was one of the Saltire books nominated in Saltire books.
I loved The Secret Knowledge. I've read that one, and I was like, I didn't know Andrew Crummie had released a new book this year, so I was really pleased to see it on the shortlist.
Yeah, and it's a really, as with all his books, it's not what it first appears. It looks as though it's short stories, but they're interwoven. Some of them are repeated, not fully, but sections. I've read that before. And they kind of interweave, and are they connected? And is it actually a novel, or is it short stories? And, there's no hard or fast answer. It's really well written. Absolutely.
I believe
you. Absolutely. Another one I'd like to mention is Alison Moore's Missing.
See, I hadn't heard, when I saw your top 10, I was like, I've not heard of this.
That came out on Salt Publishing. Yeah. And I think she has previously been Booker shortlisted, or maybe longlisted.
Alison Miller?
Alison Moore.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting mixed up.
Alison Moore. And The Lighthouse made the Man Booker shortlist in 2012. It looks like I know that off the top of my head, but I just found it very quickly. And Missing's, it's just a beautifully written book. It's a book about kind of loss and home, and someone who, again, set in the borders. There's a lot of stuff set in the Scottish borders.
Right. I suppose that's kind of the sort of the untapped territory of Scotland.
It is for a long time, since Walter Scott almost ruined it for everyone. Absolutely, and I think Alison Moore's writing is it's high quality. But I'd like to finish by talking about my favourite Scottish book of the year, which was the previously mentioned Jenny Fagan's There's a Witch in the Word Machine, which is a collection of poetry, which kind of has never left my side. It was beside my bed, it was in my bag, because I just, if I had time, I would just go and read one of her poems again, because they're just amazing. And I said in my review, or a review of it, it's like almost a favourite record that you used to, put back on, and you would find something new with it, but you were also getting more familiar with it, and there's something nice about that, That's the kind of thing I have with Blue Nile records, I put them on and get into them. And there's something about this collection of poetry that was like that.
Spell poems,
absolutely. Lots of spell poems. An amazing central piece about her very young life, and obviously before she was born, Bangor.
In fact, there's going to be a programme on the radio on Tuesday about that.
Okay.
I think is it Radio Scotland or Radio 4? I can't remember, but yeah, I'm definitely going to listen to that, because that book came out just as I was leaving Berlin, so I didn't manage to snaffle a copy before I left.
Well, there's a theme developing here, listeners.
So I've never got round to reading it, but it's been on my mind as one that I want to, because I've not heard anybody say anything other than what you've just said.
That's your Christmas sorted then, because I want people to read this book. It's a fantastic collection, and just a reminder, as if we needed one, that Jenny Fagan is just one of the finest writers we have.
Her new novel might be coming out next year.
Oh, good.
I know, and I remember talking about it with her during the period where we did Dead Queen of Bohemia, because I would, you know, like drive her around for bookshop events and stuff like that. And I remember talking to her about the new novel, which is, I think, if it's still this, and what she was saying back in 2015, then it's set in an Edinburgh tenement, and it's about all the lives of the different people in the tenement. And it sounded amazing, and I was like, hurry up. So I hope that...
Hurry up before I leave and get my free copy.
Well, see, so we don't do our novels, you see.
Right.
Yeah, no, so I hope that comes out next year. I'll be looking forward to that one.
Excellent. Is there anything you would like to round off with? Anything you haven't mentioned?
I think we've covered it. I mean, there's loads. There's actually loads more I could talk about, but I think we've been going.
We've been going for a while.
I know, it's dark now.
Well, Vikki, as always, it's a pleasure. Thanks for doing this with us.
Thank you.
And we'll be back soon talking about something completely different. Cheers.